going? Anthony Fro here, Crate Sci-Fi. Well, Halloween is fast approaching, and I've been thinking about what I'm going to do, and then sort of two things happen. A lot of people ask me to collaborate, or lots of times when I'm talking to other makers, other filmmakers, other people that want to do this, things come up where would you like to work together? And usually, I'm busy just with my own things, and I usually don't have time. But every once in a while, something comes up, and it's like, yeah, that makes sense. So a friend of mine, filmmaker, we're talking about Halloween, and he mentioned something that sort of ticked all the boxes, right? I can get the components, half of them like inexpensively at the dollar store. The other one's like on Amazon Prime, but everything's pretty inexpensive. I think it's a fun build. I think it's the kind of thing that you can follow along and do yourself, or do your version of it. So it's very doable, and it has a personal touchstone for me because I remember and have a memory of it. So what am I talking about? So in the Bionic Woman, I think that show was in the 70s. I probably watched reruns of it, but I definitely remember it. There was the Fembots. These are awesome. They're fun, they're cool, they sort of evoke, I know, something recently, like I think like in Austin Powers and other things, like people will touch on that, and maybe the people who originally designed it were inspired by something else. I don't know, but it's definitely like one of those things where you see it and somewhere in your head is like, and it's just fun, it's neat, right? So like I said, like it's Halloween time, so I was able to get these at the dollar store. I've gotten these before in black, which would be perfect, but they only had orange, so you got to roll with it. But we're gonna prime these and then paint them like a circuit board color. I was able to get like cheap LED lights, and then these sunglasses I have. These can be donors for the LEDs, sunglasses, party glasses. And then stuff on Amazon. You're just looking and it's like $5. These have like the speakers as the mouth. Got to have the eyeballs. So I think this is fun, and like I said, I think this is something that you can really follow along and do yourself. So it's pretty straightforward, but there's a lot of pieces. So I think the best thing to do is let's just dive right in. All right, as always, just take a look at all the loot, all the materials we have gathered for this adventure. All right, first thing I got to do is prep this mask. I need to make it a green circuit board color. Like I said, if you can get it in black, it's probably better. I got these in orange, but they're from the dollar store, so it's fine. So little prep work. First we got to sand, and then I take the Scotch-Brite, do a round with Scotch-Brite, and then now I'm going to follow this up with some steel wool. And basically always when you're painting plastic, this is just a good plastic, air quotes, part of the primer. And now I'm going to hit this with Mod Podge just so that it sticks to the plastic, and then I'm going to hit it with some just straight up black primer, and then the green. I like that Rust-Oleum paint because it's the paint and primer in one. And this was close to a circuit board color out there in my backyard drying. So now I'm just doing a test. The idea is I want to put this circuit board pattern on the mask, and this will kind of be underneath all the layers of wires and gadgets that we put on there. So now I'm testing. Maybe I want to brush it, maybe I want to spray it. It's always a good idea to test things, and the spray comes out okay. It's a little blotchy. I know if I hit it with clear, then the silver, that should fix that. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead with the spray. So here, this is tough because it's a rounded surface, and I'm trying to figure out the best way to get this on there. So now I'm gonna use some tape just to sort of get a closer fit so that we don't get that underspray. I will hit it with the clear and then the silver. So here I'm just doing just a light dusting with the silver so we can get this circuit pattern thing going. So I hit it, I'm just masking it with some plastic. And here I take that off, and it's a little blotchy. So right now I'm thinking this is not really working. All right, hit the pause button. So this is just not going to work out. So this was my original idea, and I wanted to include this because sometimes this happens. Usually my process is creative, and 90% of the time I just go with it, adjust, be fluid, but sometimes it's just, if I feel I'm going against the grain too hard, then I'll stop and think about why that is, right? So for this, I glanced at the source material. I was like, oh, okay, I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna get one of these masks, paint it green, and then I have these stencils that sort of give it the circuit look. And then I just started blowing forward. But this just did not want to work, and I couldn't get a nice, clean look. And then when I went back to the reference, the face was more round, and it was, so I had to rethink. So I went onto eBay, and for like 20 bucks, I got 10 pounds of circuit boards, right? So kind of awesome. So apparently people buy these because they melt them down and get the gold out of them or something crazy. But anyway, it's kind of like, usually when this happens, I'm like, oh, this is going to be much more interesting. And I didn't mind buying all this because certainly if you watch my channel, I will find a use for this, right? So then I went back and got a different mask, right? So this mask is already green. It's glow in the dark. I have my eyes and all my other stuff that I bought on Amazon. So I'm gonna put that together, and then I'm gonna cut out pieces of this board and then attach it, and then so it's kind of almost like a restart. So I could have just deleted that from the video and just started, and you would have thought it was this, but I think it's important to share the process. So here we go. Idea number 2. So back to the drawing board. So now I have this mask, and again, everything changes. Now, having just said that, I don't think this mask is gonna work. So now I'm just going to good old EVA foam. Should have started here in the first place, but you know, it's a process. So here I'm cutting the face shape out of the EVA foam because I want this to be a flat surface now. I think that's gonna be truer to the original and make more sense. I have these circuit board parts. I got a puzzle piece in mind because one piece is not big enough, so I need to find 2 pieces. All right, so here I'm using the mask as a template. So it did come in handy, and you know, I'll always use these for something, maybe some kind of alien or robot or armor in the future. So here I get an idea where to put my eyes and my mouth. So now I'm going to go ahead and make sure those are straight. Those are the eyes. I think if the eyes are a little askew, that'll actually call unwanted attention to it. So I just want to make sure those are lined up correctly. Here I'm just taking the drill. The drill makes ragged holes, but they're clean holes, and this is all going to be covered up anyway, so I'm not too worried about it not being like a really clean line. Here I'm test fitting the eyeballs and the mouth. And just already, it's just amazing what kind of cues just an eye really sets off in your brain, right? So I'm starting to feel like, okay, this is gonna work. So now I'm just getting the right size holes for this mouth speaker and the eyes. And again, this is a lot closer to what the actual 70s prop mask costume piece was. So now I need to figure out, I need to make an indentation for your nose to go into, just so that when that's up against your face. And now I'm making a template because once I'm done cutting this hole, I'm also going to need that for making a circuit board nose piece. That's one thing in the original prop costume piece. There's like some kind of weird like circuit nose protrusion. So here I'm just puzzling this out. Just going through my box of circuit board scrap, the treasure of circuit board scrap, and just finding 2 pieces. And you know, I'm looking for interesting shapes, and you know, I want to make sure where the eye hole is, there's not some big sort of ram chip or something in there. So here, I'm just giving myself a guideline for the glue because I'm going to use a generous amount of hot glue here. I'm using hot glue because this will, you know, really adhere it well, and with the hot glue I can just keep this party moving. And you know, I've already done this wrong once, so, you know, I want to get this happening. So again, just puzzling out this circuit board. That looks good, it feels good. The EVA foam is just such a great material. It's so solid, never fails me. And here I'm just going to put the bottom piece on. Again, making sure that, you know, where that hole is, that there's not some big chunk of circuitry or something there. And yeah, this is already starting to feel good. All right, so off camera, I put a bead of super glue in that joint. And here I have the cutoff wheel for my Dremel tool. And I'm just gonna go ahead and shape this out. It's, you know, you can't get a smooth cut on this because you run into all sorts of pieces. So now I'm just gonna take my stone, or this is actually my sandpaper drum, and I'm just gonna clean up these edges since that went a little rough, but no big deal. All right, so now I'm going to take out the eye holes. I do a pilot hole first. And again, you know, you got to be careful that you're not running into something. This is a little rough, but I didn't have to coax it too much, so I went with it. I was afraid it might shatter, but it didn't. So this is pretty solid stuff. And make sure you're wearing a mask, because who knows, you know, what's going on with these circuits. So I just have off camera there, I have a respirator. So here I'm taking the foam, and this is going to be the foam that's going to be the core base piece for the nose, that I'm going to use some circuits to kind of build that out. Off camera, I painted that circuit green. I don't know, sorry about that, I forgot to film that. So now I'm just going to take these circuits that I got off of Amazon, transistors, and I'm just sort of, since I have so many of them, I'm just creating like a really prominent nose piece. Again, you know, this is kind of campy. This is not like a realistic looking thing. So that actually is fun, and it gives us a little bit of wiggle room. So here I just want to really sell that that's the nose. So I just put a ton of these transistors on there, right? So now I'm just cutting off the excess, folding this around, and this actually came out really nice. You know what I mean? So sometimes it works. All right, so there's the final piece, and now I'm just laying everything out. And right before I glue in the mouth, thank goodness, last minute occurs to me that you have to breathe. So I'm putting a series of holes here that will be underneath that outer rim of the speaker, and then who's ever wearing this will ever be able to breathe, right? So now I'm just taking the sanding drum on the Dremel, and I'm just opening up, you know, the eye slots, the mouth, the nose. I'm just trying to make it more comfortable. Here I'm poking through because I think it's important, again, that we're able to breathe through this mask. Okay, so now I'm taking the heat gun, and what that does is it seals up the foam, and it gets rid of the ragged edges from our cutting processes and sanding. And here I'm just sort of massaging this whole thing, just thinking of everything for comfort now. I want to have a little bit of room for the forehead, and now the eyeballs, right? It's amazing. These little plastic eyeballs are really what brings it to life. It's, you know, I talk about this all the time, like silhouettes and visual cues. Like, this is just something that really, all of a sudden, it's a face instead of a round circuit board. So here I got to drill holes in the eyeball, so I try to get that right dead center in the pupil so that it just looks like part of the eye, and this is, you know, so you can see out of the mask. Here, it's important to make sure too that they're not crossed or looking strange, so I super glue these in place. Again, another simple thing, if that eye is just off a little, it definitely will ruin the whole effect of the mask. It'll just be too distracting. And here I'm just super gluing in this speaker. I put a little accelerator on there so that when we put it down, it just pops right in, and then we can move on to the next steps. Always want to keep the party going when possible, right? All right, so here we're looking at this, and I think we have it, right? I'm comparing the two. I'm like, okay, finally. Take two, we got it. All right, so now I want to add some lighting elements. So these are just from the dollar store. You know, I just bought a bunch of different little like party favor things, and it's just seeing what works. This I like because it's contained and it's a circle, and you could just glue it right on there, but that wouldn't be so great. So here I put a hole so I can recess this, and what I'm going to do here is I have this plastic screen, and that's just going to diffuse it a little bit, and it's just this little step that is going to add value, but also it's going to make it not look like, oh, we just stuck a dollar store party light in there, right? We're masking that, and just by this simple little step, it diffuses it. It makes this little dollar store party light look like it's part of the piece, right? And that in real time probably took 6 minutes, and you see it just makes it look more like it's part of this mask and not just something we glued on there. So now this has to stick against your face, so I'm just taking some foam and I'm making this into a plug because we're gonna have to pop it off to turn it on, put it on. Like, I always try to make these things so that they can operate simply. The easier thing would be to just do it because you're going to do it yourself and whatever works, but you want to think like somebody is not too bright is going to be using this and make it accordingly, right? So here I have these really cool like fiber optic little dollar LED lights, and I think that's going to be a nice little element. It's going to make it look like the face was ripped off, and because this is for Halloween, the person who's wearing it, it'll be cool to be walking around at night with this little white element. So here I just cut them jagged, almost like cutting hair, I guess. Put a little tape on there, and I'm going to feed it out of the mask. I just put 2 pilot holes, and I do just want this to be uneven and sort of messy looking because I want it to look like it was ripped out of its socket. Here I'm just taking the sanding drum and making a little cavity so we can tuck that away, because again it's going to have to go up against the face. So I tuck that in, just a little hot glue, and these are dollar store lights and it's for Halloween. I mean, you want to be mindful that you might have to change the batteries, but for these projects, I kind of take the chance, right? But think about, like, you might have to pop this apart, so don't put it in there permanently. And that, that really looks cool. I'm glad the last minute I stuck that little fiber optic out of there. Obviously that's not in the original piece, but I think it adds a lot. And here, let me turn the lights off so we can get a better idea. And yeah, now, that's literally $2 of lights from the dollar store, and I think it adds a lot. Okay, so now there's this lip around the mask and the side piece that's flesh. So I just have this 2mm craft foam, and I think this is going to work perfectly. And again, it's the 70s and it's campy, so thank goodness it doesn't have to look realistic. I don't think we could do this project if it was trying to be real. The whole idea of this is like it's 70s fun, right? So here I'm just making some slits in the foam so that we can put a piece of elastic in here, and we want it to hold through the night, right? These sort of things I make sure to overbuild, because after all this and all this time and energy you put into this, you don't want to walk out into your event or your show or your cosplay and have it just fall off. That would be the worst. So to overglue that, to overdo that, I think is worth it. So now I'm just trying to figure out what size strip of the foam I need to create this side of the head, this other mask element. And this is pretty straightforward. I came up with 3 inches, just taking this out, but just, take the time to make sure you get a straight line, keep your knife sharp. I got my little sanding stone there, and I'm cutting out this strip. Okay, so now I test fit it, and we want this lip to be a constant around there. So I'm just doing one final pass with the sanding drum just to make sure that there's not anything popping up. I'm taking out the snippers here because we want that lip, it's going to be about 1/4 inch. We want that to lay down nice and flat. So now test fit. It's always good to test fit. And I'm going to go ahead and just make a line so that I have the foam the same height all the way around, right? So I just make a quick little line there. I'm using a gold pen. It doesn't really matter because we're going to paint it, and that's the part that's going to be lying down flat. So now I'm just taking some super glue and just going all the way around here, right? We're just putting the trim on. Pretty straightforward, pretty tedious, pretty cool in the end. All right. So now again, I'm not too worried about the seams because I think this thing is campy. It's 70s. I think seeing the seams actually adds to it, right? So now I'm going to put that lip down because that looks good. It looks like it's pretty even all the way around. So now I take the heat gun, and this is why foam is such a great material. It's so easy to work with, and it really oftentimes does what you want it to do, which is amazing. So I'm just gluing this down, going about 3 or 4 inches at a time, heating it, folding it. I got like a craft stick because it gets a little hot. Rinse, repeat. Be careful. I learned once I get to the fiber optic that was really susceptible to the heat. It crinkled up. Luckily, it was a happy accident. It looked good, but I didn't want to ruin it. And there, that's looking good. All right, so now we're so close, finally. And it's starting to look like something. All right, so now we just want to clean up this foam with the heat gun, do sort of a last pass before we put some primer on here. So now I'm taking the heat gun, and I just want to sort of mold this out a little, right? So that it's not going into the face, it's coming out of the face. And again, that's very easy. Just hit the foam with a heat gun. That's not a hairdryer, that's a heat gun. And you can just sort of massage it into any shape that you want. Here I'm just putting a bead of super glue just to be safe. Again, you know, don't want these things falling apart. You know, why not? I tend to overbuild. All right, so now I need to mask off the face because we're gonna hit it with a primer of Plastidip, and then we're gonna paint it a flesh color. So, you know, just mask it off now. So off camera, I forgot to record this, but I just hit it with Plastidip, right? I do that on a lot of projects. So here I want to keep that face part nice and clean with that fresh coat of Plastidip so it's nice on the face. So I'm just masking this off, and I got this flesh color spray paint. So if you go to an art supply store, now with like all graffiti arts being such a thing, you can get a really cool palette of colors. You can't get that at Home Depot, but if you go to art supply, there's always like really cool spray paint colors. So now the fun part, right? We get to take off the masking, and I got a little bit of overspray on there, but I'll hit that with some green paint. But looking at that, it's, you know, especially with this project, as you know, we've been on this journey, it's such a relief. It's like, okay, we got it. So glad that we regrouped and went in the other direction. So here I'm just making a template because I want to put a piece of soft foam on the inside, because the EVA foam, where it's soft, but it's also like, if it's going to be pressed against your face with a piece of elastic, you just want a little soft barrier. So here I'm just making a template because I'm going to use some softer, like sort of furniture foam. So I have this green, really squishy, again, like furniture padding type foam. So I'm just cutting out this mask shape because that's what I'm going to want pressing against my face, and it's going to help to sort of put a barrier between those electronics that we put in there, so those are not like jamming into your forehead. And as always, just a nice sharp knife. We're going to cut this out. You don't have to be too exact about this because it's going to be on the inside. And here I'm just using some heat to seal in that foam so that we don't have the ragged edges. And now just with some hot glue, I'm gluing down 3/4 of this. The forehead I want to be a flap, so to further be able to give us access to those electronics, and again to be a barrier to those electronics. And you see there, that's that little flap, and it's just a simple little way to achieve that. All right, so now I'm just taking that green paint and just hitting the overspray, and off camera I just super glue some random pieces of transistor on there, and there it is. Like really, really cool, really fun, really campy. Here's the beauty shots. And it looks like the picture now. So the original idea we had to alter, but it's a process, and I think this came out really good. Really fun. Yeah, that came out really cool. And what I love about projects like this is that, you know, I would never think to do this. So, you know, sometimes when somebody asks you to do something, the reason why you say yes is because you're like, oh, I could imagine that, but I never thought to do that, right? So very cool, a lot of trial and error on this one. Sometimes, you know, it's the simple that complicates, right? I looked at the image, I was like, got it. And then, you know, once I started getting into it, I didn't have it. But persistence paid off. And I'm very, very happy with that. All right, well, I guess the only thing left to do now is to fire it up. I don't know. Let's change the channel to 1970. Well, as always, I hope you found this video useful. Please like, share it, subscribe, and be sure to leave a comment. I would love to read the comments. Check out the merch shop. We have hats, t-shirts. Purchasing one of those really helps the channel. And remember, I'm just here to help make sci-fi.